All right, everybody, welcome back to another session here at Event Next. Now, this one's going to be a little bit different. This one's a little special. For those of you who don't know, and well, you know me by now because I've been hosting this whole shindig of the day, but Patrick and I, who you've seen in other sessions, the co-founder of ViewStub and I, we host a weekly show every week at 3 p.m. called Event Masters. It's our way of helping and compelling event organizers to go from event producer to event master. Okay, so we figured what better way to do the show than here at Event Next. And we got to thinking, I was like, wait, we got Patrick, like we got to make sure we have a really good guest. We can't just have like a shabby guest on Event Masters at Event Next. Like we got to step our game up. So we went to the drawing board. We're like, who can we get? Right. Yeah. Me and Patrick were banging our heads. We're like, man, who do we get? So lo and behold, okay, the man, the myth, the legend. You will get to meet him in a minute. But before we do that, I want to go ahead and get into our, of course, if you don't know, follow us on Event Masters Show on Facebook, LinkedIn, YouTube, Instagram, Spotify, Apple, and everything. But for those of you who have not seen the show, you've got to see our epic intro.
Welcome to the show, Event Masters. You need to listen to this if you want to throw bigger and better events. Learn how to monetize and land bigger racks. Yeah, this is where you can learn how to do that. Event Masters.
Everybody, welcome to another episode of Event Masters. I'm excited. As I alluded to, we have a very, very, very special guest in the building today. And I'm going to let Patrick introduce him because he doesn't get to do a lot of talking because I usually ramble a lot on the show. So Patrick, go ahead and introduce the guest of today.
Coming all the way from Europe, Adam Parry with Event Tech Live, the host of Event Tech Live, Event Industry News, the one and only Adam Parry, as I just said. Welcome, man.
Dylan, Patrick, thanks for having me on an episode of Event Masters. I mean, wow, like... Dylan, anytime you want to intro me on anything, dude, like that was a
cool
intro. Like that was
cool.
one of the best intros I've ever had. But yeah,
I can come on the show, man, and I'll just intro you I'll be the hype man on all your podcasts and everything.
I might take you up on that. Actually.
All I need is like 5 seconds. Well, yeah, man, I'm excited to have you.
I'm buzzed to be here, and hello everybody that's watching now. Like, thanks for having me on, guys, and yeah, really interested to get into it.
Yeah, well then let's just do that. But before we get all technical and practical and real session-like, because this is still a session here at Event Next today, I want to, for those who have been living under a rock, because I imagine if you're an event organizer, especially added into the tech scene, if you haven't heard of this guy, like I really don't know what you're doing, like you need to get off Netflix. So for those 6 people at this event who have been living under the rock, Adam, can you just tell us your quick backstory? How'd you get to where you're at? How did you get into event tech?
Sure, absolutely. So I guess my career in the events industry started in print publishing, helped run and deliver B2B print publication for festival organizers, you know, the guys that put on the rock events, the techno events, the house events, you know, all those festivals that you've heard of, South by Southwest, Download, all that kind of stuff. And what struck me at the time was that we, as a company, we weren't leveraging technology very well in order to reach our audience. Because to me, our audience were not in offices. They were on-site, in fields, organizing events and stuff like that. And I'd been to many of my customers and readers kind of offices and seen magazine after magazine after magazine in kind of cellophane wraps. And I was like, right, this has got to change. So actually, Event Industry News was an idea born out of that problem, that issue. And I was like, we can do this better. We can reach a much wider audience, a much bigger audience quicker, and in their pockets, you know, in mobile phones and things that they were carrying around with them. That inherently gave me a bit more license to write about what I kind of liked and what my passion is, which is technology. I'm a first adopter, you know, I'm already on the next beta release of the iOS that's coming up because I just want to see what else is coming out. And what was really interesting to me at the time was that when I started writing about technology, which was quite kind of hard because there wasn't much information out there about companies like, you know, ViewStub and others at the time. But what was really interesting is when I did write about anything, the whole entire audience of Event Industry News just gravitated towards that content and was super interested in it. what was also really interesting was that it kind of resonated with people in brand events, corporates, associations, conferences, festivals. This kind of theme through the industry kind of resonated with everybody. And then that led us to really look and say, hey, is there an event for this industry? Is there an event for CTOs and CEOs and people trying to leverage technology for their events? And the honest answer was, there were events that were hosting elements of technology or having that conversation, but in very small micro pockets. It was maybe one session, 2 sessions at the most. It wasn't the focus of the event. And that's what led us to launch Event Tech Live, because we felt that not only does it deserve for the industry a place for companies to obviously showcase what they're doing and have that conversation with their customers and their prospects about what they're doing, but really there was a single focus of education for the market, because that seems to me is the most difficult part of adopting technology, is the understanding element of it. It's like, how do I use registration? How do I use social amplification? How do I use beacons? How do I use AR? How do I use some of the boring backend stuff like project management tools and CRMs and all that kind of stuff, right? So that's what led us to launch Event Tech Live. And that event has now been around for, I guess, the best part of 8 years. The last physical event we did was 2,700 attendees from 47 different countries across 2 days with 5 stages of content on both days. And then just like everybody else, we pivoted to a fully virtual event last year because here in the UK, we were not allowed to do physical events. And that blew up. More attendees. We went to something like 90 plus countries, which was great to see. And then from there, we've now used a virtual event to, I guess, geo-clone and launch a new event as an extension of Event Tech Live, which is our US and Canada event coming up in June.
Yeah, that's super cool. I love how you take the education approach, because I see it firsthand. Is people they utilize technology, but they don't know what they're doing or where they're at or the importance of it or new stuff that, and I don't know if you've seen it. I joke with Patrick all the time. Events in general are usually like real estate. They're just a giant, slow moving industry that don't adopt new things. So I'm glad someone's coming in from from looking at all those new things and going, hey, did you know about AR? Did you know about VR? Did you know about, this new registration platform that allows seamless check-in, which gets your lines down? Because I've always said technology amplifies the experience. I love events because it'll never disrupt this industry. I'm a big proponent, the world's not going to go virtual. I'm going to get to go back to planning in-person events. We're going to have big crowds again. We're going to have giant music festivals. We're going to go back. That'll always be there. That'll be there 100 years from now. But technology will amplify it. It'll make it more efficient. And so I would love to take that out of your brain and figure out, for organizers, how do they get a hold and a grasp of this technology? Because it can become overwhelming, man. I'm just saying, there's a lot of it, from the registration to the production tech to the lighting tech to the now virtual event stage tech and everything like that. It's like, holy cow, where do I start? So let's start there.
I think it's such a good point, and technology is generally thrust upon somebody who's not necessarily a technology person most of the time. You might be a marketing person, then all of a sudden it's like, right, figure out all this social tech, figure out retargeting and digitization of our ads and all this kind of stuff. So we have to bear that in mind. But what I would say is, my opinion is, probably everybody within some event management company or event organizing company will have a role in technology at some point within their kind of role of what they do for that event. And the easiest way to focus on what technology really should matter to you is, what can save me time or what can help me do my job better? And that's where to focus. If it sits outside of that remit of your job, forget about it. It's not for you, it's for somebody else within the business. And that's the easiest way to focus down and not get distracted or not feel overwhelmed with all of this technology. To give you an example of how big a job technology is, Scott Wilcox, innovation officer, chief innovation officer, should I say, for South by Southwest. They have a team of 40 just dealing with technology for their event. And then there's 4 in addition to that in innovation, which is kind of looking at all the really end fringe stuff, the new startups, all of the crazy stuff. And even between 40 of them, it took all of them to pull together kind of what you saw just recently at South by Southwest. So I would say to anybody watching this session today or on replay or whenever, do not feel overwhelmed with technology. but just focus on yourself and what are the tools and technologies that might help you to do your job better, more efficiently, quicker, less stressful, or even achieve better results, right? So I think one of the most interesting things about the events industry is that we charge for our time. Like across the board, we charge for our time, the amount of time that it takes to produce an event, the amount of time it takes to organize an event. And technology should be able to make us more efficient and actually give us more profit by giving us more time to be able to do our jobs. That's the way that I see it anyway.
I love how you broke it down. If it doesn't help me or make it a better event, then I don't need to worry about it like that. Because I think some organizers go in all the time. I'm sure you've seen this. It's just they overcomplicate everything because they feel they need to, lack of understanding, and then the whole tech stack of their virtual event or hybrid event or in-person event just crumbles because they tried to do too much because they were trying to layer on things they thought they needed and didn't listen to Patrick and I's first episode about feedback loop and actually understanding what your attendees want versus what you think they want. So I love that. I love how you break it down. So I guess my follow-up question to that, unless Patrick has a question.
No, I was going to say we deal with a lot of people who do results because ViewSub's mainly ticketing, so the monetization, the attendance. So that's huge for us. What we see, unfortunately, is people not utilizing the technology as much as they possibly can. That's another downside that we see, and I know that you talk about it sometimes, is people will come on our platform and they'll just like not spend time. They're like, oh yeah, I know the platform, I know all the features, or oh, I'm using this other, mobile app and I know kind of what it does and I'm only using 3 things. But if they spend another hour and look at the other side of the mobile app, it could really put some better results in their event. So I see both sides of it too.
Yeah, I think it's really important to if you're using a technology, really take the time to be a specialist in it, right? And that's why it's so great to see so many platforms actually like have qualifications and certifications, because it gives you a sense of I'm moving through and I'm getting better at this technology. And that's something I hope to see kind of filter down from the likes of HubSpot and Salesforce and all those kind of companies down to our event technology companies, because I really do believe this is the biggest shift we are ever going to see in marketing. Is all of a sudden events have gone from a very physical thing now to a very digital technology and digitization strand to it, which is putting it on a pedestal with digital marketing. I mean, in fact, in some ways, it could even be better because of how locked down like Apple and Google and things are getting around security and tracking and data, right? Is there a better way for an event to have a focused audience that you can put your brand and your message and your community together in front of? Probably not. But I think one of the other things that I see a lot, to your point, Patrick, is people also focusing on the buzz, right? The buzz tech. Like, I need AR, I need VR, I need my event to be in VR. I need to wow my audience with these things. And this is where kind of like event apps really fell down. All of a sudden there was a rush to, well, let's stick an event app in our customers' hands because that's what they're going to want. And then there's all these challenges around, well, do they want to download them? Do they forget about them? What's the value to them? I was in an event, and I can remember it vividly, of a customer walking into an organizer's office and ripping them a new one because they took away their paper brochure for the event. They were like, I don't want this app. And that's where I think we also need to be careful as event organizers, is not to invest in the wrong things because our audience isn't ready for it. It's a balancing act.
Wow.
Hear that, people?
Yeah.
Ask your attendees what they want. It's about them. Like, we do what we do for the attendees, not yourself. That's what I took from it.
Episode number 1. And Adam,
I think 2 and 3 and 4 and 5
and like
6.
all other episodes.
Like, I think every show we have brought up, hey, just ask your attendees what they want, because I promise you they know what they want better than you know what they want.
To be honest with you, your attendees just probably want better coffee and better lunch than
that's what you'd be amazed. Like, I always tell people, I don't do like I do extravagant events, but I don't at the same time, because I literally just go, hey, attendee, what do you want? And they're like, I want better coffee. Okay, great. I'm going to give you really great coffee experience, but I'm going to give you better. I'm going to give you what you want. You don't, and then I'm going to figure out some things you maybe don't know you want. But at the same, I'm here to deliver what you want. So I thank you for third partying that for us on this show.
Oh yes, and Adam, you made a good point as far as the pandemic kind of speeding up the acceleration of event professionals adopting technology. because we were doing hybrid events even before hybrid events were the buzz, right? And we would talk to people, and it's a slow moving industry, as we just said, and people were like, nah, I'm not really gonna, mess with it. And then like 3 months into the pandemic, it's like, oh my God, I need this, and that. And it's like, it's been great. And then back to your other point, it's like, yeah, I need like full virtual booths with virtual reality. And like we see it, and it's like, yeah, a lot of events don't actually have a lot of people that visit those virtual booths. And they're like, no, but I need it. I really need it. So
I think
Dylan can definitely attest to that.
yeah, to be fair to the events industry in a whole, right? Let's break it down. Most of the time, events happen on an annual or a biannual basis. And there's a big build up to that event. There's a lot of pressure. There's a lot of things can go wrong in the physical world. And there's a lot of spinning plates and cogs to make those physical events happen. And just naturally, humans, as we get older, we are creatures of keeping things the same because we know what's coming and we like the status quo. And when it comes to events, there are also generally lots of other stakeholders involved that want what they had last year because that's what works for them. And that's where innovation and the opportunity to quickly iterate on what you have done before kind of stagnates because of those gaps between those events and stuff. And that reluctance or that resistance to change because, well, if it's not broken, why fix it? Why all of a sudden change things and things? Now, when the pandemic happened, boom, that went out the window. There was no other option than to change and do things differently. I hope that our industry embraces that and embraces that going forward, because ultimately this will make our industry so much stronger. It's not for me a case of virtual events or physical events. It's not one or the other. It's a blend of all of them and hybrid in between, depending on what your objective is. And I think if we share our learnings as an industry and, collaborate on that kind of stuff, our sector will go from a 9 trillion industry business to maybe 100 trillion business because of the amount of investment and money and talent and things that we can attract to it.
Yeah, no, 100%. And I think where you went with that is super interesting because people are scared to transition and adapt. And I think when the pandemic started, I think the biggest miss that I was seeing, and that I think is still a lot of issue in the industry, is everyone who was in 2019, this is how we did it. Like you said, this is how we've been doing it for 52 years. This event's been going on, and they go virtual, or they have to go virtual, or they're adding a hybrid component, and they're trying to do everything they're doing in person virtually. And I come from a standpoint of, hey, maybe the massive format difference between your in-person event and your virtual leads you to maybe having to think a little bit different. And I think that's what has been a really hard thing for a lot of organizers, just thinking different, right? Because they only think in terms of an event professional. And I put out a post the other day, or like a few months ago, I was like, event people are now TV producers, because you have to they think a lot different. And event organizers need to think a little bit different, especially as this evolves. And we'll get into what the future of tech looks like. If you think tech is crazy now, like, just wait a year or 2 years or 3 years or 4 years. Like, it's going to be nuts when we have, like, when hologram, I was talking to Will the other day, I was like, about holograms walking in your house, because it was like, that could be really cool. But no, I love how you take that, because, like, what is your stance on that, of the, like, coming from an in-person? Where do you see the biggest divide for organizers coming from in-person, going to virtual, or just adding in a hybrid component?
I think at the moment, the biggest challenge is now there is pressure on bringing those physical events back, right? For the last 12 months, it's kind of, that's off the table. So let's just focus on doing as good a job as we can with a virtual style event. Now there's physical events coming back, and there is a balance of expectation between the people, the stakeholders that want to drive those events to happen, and an audience. Are the audience ready? Kind of how much of that audience wants to stay virtual? Do they now expect a digital element to the event? I think also one of the biggest challenges is, how do we monetize that virtual element to make sure that we can still feed the physical, and vice versa, in terms of value sponsorship, access to content? Is it free? Is it paid for? And I think that's really different depending on what type of event that you do as well, right? So at the moment, I think there is this issue with, there's so much free virtual content, it's actually really difficult to monetize your virtual event, because it's like, well, you kind of got this over here, and there's something similar over here that's free. And also people have now got competition. Like every individual company can be a virtual event organizer.
Yeah.
So I think it's going to be honestly, I think it's going to be a good but rocky transition into how, as a professional industry, we figure out what are our tricks of the trade, what are our tools, and what makes our events so different that they really stand head above shoulders of everybody else, so that we can still make sure that we make money as an industry and we can organize great events. So blue ball, I don't know. What does that look like? I think there's going to be an explosion of virtual events because I think everybody's now got the potential to be a virtual event organizer. Mm-hmm. I think that's going to feed into a growth in physical events, because ultimately, even if you start out as a virtual event, you're going to want to bring that audience and that community together in some form, whether that's a retreat, a get together, or just beers in a bar. Like that's all events industry. And then there are going to be people that, you know what, they just go, we're going to leave the virtual stuff on the sidelines. We're going to maybe record the content and make that available to everybody that turns up. And we're actually going to really focus down on the FOMO of missing out on the conversations and the connections that are happening in the room. And I really think that's kind of, everybody's going to slice it in a different way.
Yeah, and I think from my take, that's going to come depending, like you said, on the type of event. Mm-hmm. You know, I think the music and entertainment world is going to be slower to go hybrid and virtual than it is in the B2B association space. And I've often said it's just because one event is more boring than the other to go to at the beginning of the day. So I'd rather not have to travel across the world to go to an event that my company's making me go to in the first place, and I have to leave my family and kids and all of that. Compared to a music festival where I'd live all year to go. Exactly. So it's a different perspective. You're just not going to be able to replace that club or that festival vibe, are you? Like even like Glastonbury here in the UK, mm-hmm. BBC do a great job of televising it, but there's no tingles on down my back of like me standing there. Exactly. You know, there's no conversations with friends and all that kind of stuff. So yeah, there are totally going to be some events that just like, you know, virtual does not replicate the meaning of that event existing. Yeah. So I guess my curiosity would be then, because I kind of touched this on my session, like how does one decide whether it's virtual, hybrid, in person? What would be your take from your perspective on how me as an event organizer go, okay, I'm going to do a virtual event. I'm going to go all the way in person for that FOMO, or, hey, I'm just going to go ahead and do two. How do I make that decision? How do I make that decision? Good Lord, I can't talk this Dylan, you said it already, mate. It's ask your audience. Oh, there we go. So I answer my own question. There you go. It's as simple as that. I mean, okay, if you've got a totally new event that you are launching, even then that's probably off the back of you having an existing audience relationship or idea about an audience. I mean, the technology that we have at our fingertips in order to get feedback from anybody in the world, like, there's very little cost to that. So if it's a new event, totally brand new, I would sense check your friends, your network, your community, your trusted advisors and things like that and go, how does this make sense? Me personally, I do think launching a brand new event virtually is a very good way to de-risk and build that event out into a physical event. It really is, because it works on, other than your virtual event platform, you're relatively working on safe, high profit margins, on sponsorships and things. And there's very little that can stop it happening, like a pandemic. Like there's nothing that's going to, the venue can't shut down kind of thing. But I think when it comes to deciding whether you bring back an event to physical, I think you really need to, sense check that with your audience. Like, do they want that? An example of that is I had an event, a friend who organized an event here in the UK. It's a 10,000 ticket in-person event, sells out within like minutes because of the content, like boom, done. All of a sudden this last year, they went to 60,000 attendees. Now, are they going to, I think that's the writing on the wall for them, right? They're not going to go back all of a sudden and not have a virtual component to their event, because all of a sudden they miss 50,000 customers, 50,000 connections, opportunities to grow and all that kind of stuff. So yeah, it comes back to ask your audience, like, what do they want? Don't overcomplicate it, people.
Keep it simple. The events are for the attendees, not you.
Yeah, exactly. I'm going through the same thing right now. I'm still I'm going into planning an actual new music festival. Never been done. Never have I tried it. And I literally just ask people, like, hey, like, how much would you pay for this ticket? Like, hey, well, where should it be? Hey, what artist would you love to see? Like, literally everything is asked. Like, hey, like, do you guys want like porta johns or trailers? Like, what are you guys thinking here? Like, I want to know. I'm just going to build this for you guys. I'm not a genius. My genius is knowing I'm not one. So
it's interesting that you say that, Dylan, about like how much do you want to pay for this event? Like, I've been speaking to, we can talk about like my event 3.0 over here. It's like, how do speakers get paid? Can we go Patreon style? Can we go tipping? Can speakers and people that help the event thrive get tipped off the audience? Could you crowdfund the launch of an event and have all your tickets and everything sold up front, just like a festival, right? Like, no festival happens without an audience, really. It'll get canned and shelved. So could we actually, is there an event crowdfunding platform to be born somewhere out there that then helps people bring their events to actually happening, virtually or physically? Because people go, hey, Dylan, I'll pay $20 for my ticket, or I'll pay $50. And there's so many different ways that we can launch events, and I think technology can underpin that. But I think it's a really exciting time. There's so many ways that can be spun.
Yeah, absolutely. So we've diagnosed how to, like, kind of quickly touched on like how to go virtual, which like should I go in person, virtual, the kind of the pros and cons of both. I've often said like virtual is good for reach, where you said the 10 to 60, and then but at the end of the day, it's all designed to get them to an in-person. Really, at the end of the day, no matter if it is virtual, we're going to want to meet with them so that we can go deep. So that's kind of been my take on it, and that's why that whole free debate. What do you have? Actually, I'm curious, because Patrick and I did a show on this too. Do you have an opinion on the free versus paid virtual debate?
Yeah, it's an interesting. Again, there's many ways to kind of slice it up. I would prefer to not have free events, because then I think everybody in the supply chain can get paid, right? Mm-hmm. Like, from speakers to hosts to production to the platforms, like, and there's that old saying, like, nothing's free. If you're getting a free ticket, you're the product ultimately, right? So that's right. You're being leveraged, just like Facebook. You get a free account, you're being leveraged. Mm-hmm. Maybe there's really cost-effective ways to host events, but I think what's interesting is when somebody hands over even a few bucks, they're committed to that event, they've invested, they're more likely to turn up. Now, there's some events out there that are spitballing like huge numbers, but they're not telling us how many of those people actually turned up, how many engaged, how many stuck around, how many spoke to a sponsor, all that kind of stuff. The other way that you could spin it, though, is let's take a free virtual event and it's funded by sponsors. I think if you're going to go that way, probably one of the best ways to give value is to make those engagements in terms of content, group engagement, so like workshops, roundtables with sponsors, to give like face-to-face time and value, because that's one of the best things about physical events, is that they allow you to build relationships with other people extremely quickly. That's one of the key values of physical events. And I think what we've done as an industry on the whole is we've just streamed content. We've tried to Netflix it. And actually that's kind of, yes, that's a proponent of an event, but there's all this other stuff that happens outside of that stage content, the beers at the bar, the chatting in the aisles, the chilling on somebody's stand, the park run before the event or whatever it is. And we forget that people want face time. So I think if you're going to do a free event, going with content that's sponsored, but still around the theme of content so people can get involved in that conversation, that's probably a really valuable way to do it, to keep the event free and to keep the money going. But yeah, I'd like to see our industry really be strong on, if we're doing an event and there's value there, then there should be enough value there for at least somebody to hand over a few dollars to be invested in the event.
Yeah, I'm with you, man. I'm with you.
Mhm.
I know like we made Event Next free for this one because we like made an internal decision, like how can we get this education out to as many people as possible? And that's where we like I go back to the WIT thing. We want to get out to a lot of people as possible. You know, hopefully you guys now know about View Stuff. There's a lot of reasons in this free event here, but I'm with you. I'm very strong proponent of get paid what you're worth. The event has value, and if you feel you can't charge for it, well then you need to reverse engineer your event because there's something wrong here if people don't want to pay for it, in my opinion, in my personal opinion.
Absolutely. Just so everybody knows, Event Tech Live UK and Europe has historically been free, but people are giving their time to turn up to come to our venue and engage with our exhibitors and sponsors. That's enough value to me. That's a good relationship. That's a good exchange. Event Tech Live US, there are free tickets, but you have to meet a certain criteria and being a high value enough attendee in order to have that access for $0. And even then we say, hey, it'd be really, it'd be nice for you to like engage with a couple of sponsors. That helps us out. You should be there for that as well. But you know what? If you don't want to be the product, you can still access the event. There's just a cost. And we're very transparent about that. It's like, if you don't want to do this, then just pay $70 and you get access to all the content and everything that you want, and you're not the product anymore. And I think that transparency is the way to go.
I think there's some interesting models that can be played from the TV world that I think event organizers are thinking only like events, and that you could look at that freemium model of, Spotify and Hulu. Well, Hulu's got ads no matter if I pay for it or not, but you know what I mean? Of like, there's reasons to upgrade to a paid ticket that are less salesy and more VIP driven. So for one example where I'm going with that is like, if I go a free event, you have ads. We're going to hit you with ads like every, 12 seconds. And then if you do upgrade to the premium option, there is no ads, sponsors are less in your face. They're more passive kind of thing. So there are models, I think, and that goes back to the shift in mentality that I think a lot of event organizers hopefully take away from this event in general is I think they're there, and I think they're adapting of it. It just takes a lot of mental shift and what works and what doesn't in this new virtual world. And that's why I constantly go back to like, look at what TV does and how they roll. Like all their content's free, but they're using all sponsors, and there's ways to get creative about it.
Yeah, if let's just talk about some like sponsorship ideas and things for your audience at the moment.
Yeah.
One of my really good friends, he's currently working with a like private podcasting platform, which essentially as an organizer, you can broadcast all your content live at the event, then take that content, create it as podcasts, which is really digestible if you think about it in terms of like, I can do it at the gym, I can do it in the car, all that kind of stuff. And actually, they've made some great money by, hey, you either have to turn up to the event or you have to buy access through the podcast post-event if you want access to the content. And they've made thousands by just selling like $10 like licenses to this content that gives the attendees or post-event attendees access. That gets the content to live on. There's value there, but it's a low enough price point that people go, hey, you know what, for $10, I'm going to access like 200 sessions in podcast form and be able to kind of listen to it at any point that I want. And I think that's the innovation that we need to see in the way that we're kind of like pricing and charging for access and things like that. Is like, where does this content live on as well? Like, I get charged a good subscription fee to still watch Jurassic Park from like 1997, right? But I liked that because I've got that level of access. So I think there's many ways to kind of slice and drive revenue through the business. You could do the event for free, drive all that audience through, and then send all of that audience kind of a post-event email to say, hey, if you want this content to live on, $10, and make a ton of money. I was careful not to swear there.
It's all right. Patrick gets on me too. I get a little vocal sometimes. No, I think that's really cool. So I'm curious to hear from your perspective, because you have a much broader look on event tech than at least myself. I won't speak for Patrick, but a broader perspective, because I narrow just because I'm in the space of event platforms and things like that. As an event organizer, I do dabble, but at the end of the day, I still let event tech people do what they do, and they bring tech to me. But I'm curious as to see, like, kind of break it down into like, what are you most excited about in the current landscape of event tech? Because you do have that, like I said, a different perspective than where I think a lot of people, and let me preface this question, I guess, a lot of people, when they say event tech, right now automatically go event tech, like event platforms, like virtual, like that's the only event tech out there. Like it's all of a sudden no more tech exists besides virtual event platforms. And so I'm curious to hear from you outside of virtual event platforms, what are you most excited about in tech, and kind of maybe even some companies or platforms that would help our organizers?
Yeah, absolutely. I think okay, let's try and break this down. Well, we are no longer event organizers. We are event organizers, publishers, community managers, you know, artists, TV channels, like you said, Dylan. Like, to think that you can just be a pure play event organizer anymore, maybe there is some truth in that, but I think you would be missing out on a huge amount of bandwidth and profitability and opportunity within the event types that you do, right? So what I'm seeing is actually that event tech spin out into community platforms, publishing news platforms, ways to keep your audience connected, engaged, and supported, but also kind of drive new opportunities and new revenue streams. So if events go away, again, there's still profitability there for your business. You know, one of the things, and I'll hold my hands up and say this quite proudly, is if we'd have had just all of our eggs in one basket, which is events, it would have been a really difficult time for me and my team over the last 12 months. Because we've got the publication, because we've got the podcast, because we've got other means of driving revenue into our business, which was still relevant to our audience, that as a business kept us afloat and alive, and an income stream coming in. And that's one of the big things that I saw, is everybody was all in on events and then didn't have anything outside of that to kind of do. So I'm seeing lots of kind of focus on other technologies outside of events, but in publishing and all that kind of stuff that can really help support businesses going forward in driving different revenue opportunities, but also keeping their audience connected. When it comes to an event level, what am I really into? I'm a geeky. I love all the back end stuff that kind of makes my job easier, like project management tools and all that.
Let's get geeky, man. Let's get geeky.
I mean, why are we still using spreadsheets, dude? Like, I mean, that's I'm a big fan of automation. Like, if I can automate follow-ups and knowing who's interested, who's responding, that kind of stuff, I really love that, because that makes my job easier. And ultimately, it often makes my audience easier because they can get the answers or the information they want right there and then, but not wait like 12 hours for me to wake up or something like that. So I'm a big fan of automation, and I think that works really, really well for the events industry, because ultimately, like I said before, we charge for our time. That's how we make a living. What else? Oh, interesting stuff.
Can we stop using spreadsheets?
There's two definitions of event manager at the moment, and that's I fell into it and spreadsheets galore. Like, those are the two. Like,
you're 100% right. I've always, like, there's two different event organizers. One who's very good at logistics and like spreadsheets and like that, and then people like me who suck at all of that, but come in with these crazy random ideas and have been strategy, and I know how to make objectives match experience and all of that. That's what I'm good at. But you put me on a spreadsheet, dude, holy crap, I'm done. Yeah, I'm out of it.
I think if there's one technology that I just think in general as a whole society, most of us don't actually appreciate right now, but I could see being used in so many different assets of the events and experience industry, is blockchain technology. Now, we might be getting like super technical and geeky for the audience. I don't know.
Let's do it.
But, you know, like things like smart contracts, crypto tickets, understanding where your data is going as an attendee, right? Like, as I go to a trade show, I get scanned, I get asked for my data here, there, and everywhere. Like, where has that gone? Like, what's the journey of my personal data from that sponsor? Did that sponsor hand it to one of their friends because they're in the same industry, or they just need some leads or something like that? Like, that's a really interesting thing for me to know, that when I hand my data over, I've got traceability on it as an attendee. And maybe there's value to my data that I stop paying to go to events, and I actually get paid to go to events. Like, what if that flip was switched? Because I, as an organizer, can get the sponsors in, because you guys are like the two top CEOs of, you know, the events industry, and I want you in that room. So then it becomes a partnership between audience, organizer, and sponsor, and a much cohesive one. But that needs to be based on some kind of transparent or traceable technology, so everybody's got clear and understanding visibility of that value. and that exchange. And that can only be done with something like blockchain technology, in my opinion. And there's so much outside of that, like just the speed at which things can be done and the traceability and all the technologies that are going to build on top of blockchain. I think it's super interesting, that kind of side of things.
Going super futuristic on us.
Sorry.
Some people were like probably listening to this still, and they're probably like, blockchain. What's blockchain?
I'm literally the comments I get.
Around crypto.
I guarantee you the comments right now. Blockchain. What is blockchain? I did, but I'm with you, dude. Let's back up a couple years. I do want to touch on this because I have questions and I want to bring a couple points up on that, because I do believe when you're looking at tech, looking at that, the whole other side of the world's new internet is something to look at. But from now until, because I always say we know what events used to be. Like they were in-person events, like very few were hybrid. The big boys were doing it. Patrick and Spencer were cool cats to see the trend coming and things like that. But right now, the current state, and let's say probably the next year or two, what do you think are some common themes and things that organizers need to be thinking about? And minus blockchain and NFTs and all of that, which I do want to get your opinion on.
Yeah, sure. So I think contactless events is going to be a thing that we see quite soon. That means, for contactless to me, means that I'm not handing business cards over. I'm not handing leaflets and flyers. The exhibitors are digitized by the event organizer so that I can scan a QR code, touch my phone or my badge or something like that to collect information. And there's an exchange there as well. So there's sponsor value, there's kind of exhibitor value. Now, we use that at Event Tech Live. We've used that for the last 4 years. With, I think, like last time we did it was 12,000 exchanges of information across the show. And I think we're going to see that more and more, because for me, that's part of not only making sure there's value there, but ensuring that people feel safe at events. Like everybody's very sensitive at the moment between transmission and hygiene and all that kind of stuff. So I think that's one of the things that we'll see explode in the sector, as well as, not having to punch your details into a kiosk anymore. You can, again, just turn up, you scan your badge, you get your badge, or maybe even badges go away. Maybe, I don't know. We'll see.
Microchips.
Yeah,
I'm just kidding. That'd be weird.
I think what I can also see is a deeper integration between registration data and some of that data being able to be fed to exhibitors and sponsors, and a little bit of facial tracking and recognition, in the sense that as an exhibitor, if you're kind of approaching my stand or my booth or whatever, maybe I can display a personal message to you because I understand a little bit about you, or the technology that I'm using for my AV understands a little bit about you. That could be some really basic stuff like, do I like red or blue, right? It doesn't have to be like, what's your jean size? What did you eat for breakfast kind of stuff. But it could be enough to enable a sponsor or an exhibitor to be very personalized with their messaging so that it reach the right people at the show. Because there's one thing about events, on scale, en masse, it is extremely hard for you to find the people that really going to make the difference to your business within that event ecosystem. So I think technologies like that can actually streamline the process. I think there's some crazy stat somewhere that, like at trade shows, people on average spend no more than 2 hours at it because they're so time poor, they're so time sensitive. So if we can use technology like that to make it efficient for people, give them a personalized route around the event, make sure that they've got pre-scheduled meetings with those people, like that's where like matchmaking technology can come back into it. And I would really like to see better use of technology for audience engagement, in the sense of like, can we get away from the business card in the fishbowl to win the Ford Mustang or something like that? Is that really the way to go? Like, I think there's a better way to do it, and it's not about mass data, it's about the right people and the right data. So maybe that's somewhere technology can kind of play a role in actually happening. And I think that's something we'll see over the next couple of years.
No, I really like that breakdown, and I think you're 100% right. Patrick, you got anything to add?
Well, no. Yeah, I do. Sorry. It's funny, actually, 6 months leading up to the pandemic, I saw the facial recognition. I saw some of the touchless stuff that you were talking about, the badges and the sponsorship transfer and the attendee engagement. And I think, everything that you just touched on, that's going to excel everything, which is really cool. So I think it's like it just happened right before, and now it's boom, slingshot.
Yeah, no, I'm with you 100%. I think a lot of things were coming and we might have saw inklings of it. And then the pandemic happened and maybe gave, because the interesting shift, I think technology or events were always trying to catch up to technology. And now it's almost technology is trying to catch up to what event organizers expect because the pandemic shifted everything. Our whole minds are like, well, we need all this tech, and tech companies are like, all right. I put a post on LinkedIn the other day. I was like, every event organizer is like, I want this feature now. Like, we need VR. And we're tech platforms are just like, thank you. We'll add it to our roadmap. It's the best we can do. So we're like, we're playing. It's shifted. We're playing catch up more than the events are now, and it baffles me. So
everybody's all of a sudden an expert and a critic. It's like,
oh yeah, because they now know what a stream key is. They're all of a sudden tech experts. It's funny. So we've got the past landscape, we've got the current landscape. You heard the touchless, you heard the efficient, and I think that's where technology is really going to help you guys, and that's what I want you to take you from this. So before we wrap this up, let's get a little futuristic here, because I do want to just chat on. And for those of you who are like still puzzled and commenting at us, like, what, go back to blockchain, what is that? I'm super interested in that and what that does to the event landscape. And like you said, I was in a conversation the other day about ticketing and reselling and what some of these big resale platforms do and how they overcharge and and I was like, wait, this could all be fixed with crypto ticketing and blockchain ticketing. Like, it could be automatically fixed. I know it came from this event. I know this reseller sold it, and we can put a cap on how much they can resell it for. Like, it can automatically fix a lot of our issues, in my opinion. So I would love to hear from your perspective of what that kind of blockchain world will do to disrupt our industry.
Yeah, I think you've got it right there, Dylan. It's that's definitely one of the things it can help with ticket hawks and price scalping and that kind of thing. And that's got to be a better experience for attendees, because there are so many people that don't get to see their favorite band or their artist, or they don't get to go to their favorite event, because unfortunately technology is actually used to make that damn near impossible, because it's, tickets are bought up really, really quickly. And I know companies like ViewStub and others are trying really, really hard to kind of combat that in various different ways. But I think, crypto tickets and things like that are a really interesting way to combat that with that technology. And look at what Gary Vaynerchuk's just done, right? He's just launched his own series of NFTs. If you bag one of those NFTs early on, you get a ticket for live to, I forgot what the name of the event is now. VCon, that's right.
Yeah.
Thank you for that. So again, launching events or having founder members of your event community, maybe you launch with some non-fungible tokens is the word, that's what NFT means for the audience. And that means that it can never, it's only as that one in life. So that means that if I grab one of those NFT tickets, that's my ticket for life for that event. And I love that idea, because that brings a really solid foundational core community. And if one of those people want to leave that community, they can pass that kind of founder ticket on to somebody else in the community. So there can be like a lineage of the event kind of thing. And then blockchain and cryptos, one of the things that I think I've seen recently is Rally. Have you come across Rally?
I have not.
Rally is a network of creating tokens for content creators. And this is one of the biggest challenges in the events industry, is the balance of people wanting to speak at events because they see the value in the exposure, or they're trying to get new leverage for a new product or a new service, or just themselves, versus people who want to make a living out of speaking and actually require an income stream and that kind of stuff. And there's lots of conversations about covering, speaker fees, and maybe, but then it's like, how much do you pay somebody? Is Seth Godin worth 5 million? Am I worth 200 grand? How do we set the value? And what I'd like to see is being able to put some of that control in the hands of the audience. Like, I might have done a really bad session today and nobody's liked it. So do I get paid for that? Do I get paid for doing a bad job? Or do I get paid for doing a good job? And I think that's where blockchain and crypto can come into play, in some form of like digital currency, that I, as an attendee, if I really like that session, I really like that speaker, I can, just like Twitch does, right? I forgot what the Twitch, is it a Twitch token or the Twitch token?
Yeah, the idea of a platform specific currency almost.
Yeah. But I'd like to see an event industry currency. I'd like to an experience token, let's call it. I've dubbed it right here. So if anybody comes and launches an experience token,
this is the moment, man.
An
if you guys run with
token.
it.
Yeah. And that's that's something I can invest in and grow. And then the events industry can use it. It's the events industry's currency. Attendees can use it. Attendees can get rewarded for it. Attendees can exchange their data with sponsors for more experience tokens that they can spend on event tickets and experiences and things like that. And then they become is that going off? Is that too far? Can we not have our own currency in the events and experience industry?
I think we can.
Because I think that would be a really cool way for the events industry to have transparency and a way to monetize, pay for, and deliver events. If we could have our own currency, and as the events industry grows, that currency increases in value and it becomes more profitable for you to use that currency. And maybe there's a way that currency can be reinvested. Or another thing that crypto and that kind of stuff does is it gets staked, doesn't it? So it gets used and leveraged out for other means and other programs, and then interest is paid back to the holders of that currency and stuff. So and that's not even getting into things like
that's just the tip of the iceberg.
That's just the tip of the iceberg. But yeah, that's some of the things that I think we could see come into the events industry, and I could see a lot of resistance to that, because all of a sudden, like, if somebody creates or a collective creates an experience token and then that is adopted as the form of currency in exchange, there's going to be a lot of people that are left out in the cold because they've not moved or they've been resistant to something like that. Like, only time will tell, though, I guess.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, look, Adam, we have taken up a lot of your time today, and I very much appreciate it. This was a really cool episode of Event Masters, and I'm glad we were finally able to get you on the show and everything. So, Patrick, any final words, my man?
No, I love it. I just want to ask one quick question.
Sure.
What platforms, what new startup companies or what companies have evolved enough for what's at the top of your mind for the next 12 months? What are some event tech companies that people should be on the radar for?
Sure. Okay. So I'm going to give a shout out to a company called Twigged. They are what I would class as the evolution of registration, more in control for the attendee, and hopefully going to build out some crypto kind of reward programs and things like that. Now, they're not competition to any platform or any other registration provider. They're kind of like a technology that would sit on top of that and amplify the experience and give extra kind of value to that. So they're coming at it from like a more of a partnership level than a competitive level, which I think is a really interesting strategy. Like, we see a lot of that now, don't we, about people building onto existing ecosystems to create better tools or better experiences. And then from a production level, for like anybody that is involved in like dealing with speakers and sessions and lots of different times and scheduling and things, which is going to be a real big challenge now that we're going bigger with virtual events, I'd give a shout out. They're not a brand new, but they are still small. A company called Lineup Ninja. Like, their technology saves my team every single event 8+ days of work. We've tracked it, like, for an individual person, and I think that's one of the startups that I've seen over the last couple of years that really don't get a big enough kind of shout out and haven't got huge amounts of visibility, but the technology is just fundamentally like spot on in terms of saving people's time and money when coming to organizing events and dealing with speakers.
Wow, Lineup Ninja. That's a cool one. I just looked it up. It's like a glorified Google Calendar for events. Super easy. Yeah, we'll have to drop it in the comments.
Yeah, for sure. They get plugs and they're not even here. No, I mean, and I think that's it. Like, because like you said, the collaboration over competition, it sounds like somewhat like that first one you mentioned could be something that works with us here at ViewStub, and we collab. And I think that's the future of this industry. Before we take this off, is these tech companies for the longest time have been running in their own lanes. And I know Patrick and I are just starting to discuss like with other platforms that are like, literally, I think a year ago we would have looked at like, no, bro, you compete with us. And now we're going, okay, but our tech has this, but you don't. and we have this API, and we could do this with this embed, and boom, now all of our platforms work together, and you do what you do best, we do what we do best, and we work together versus trying to compete and kind of ruin the industry as a whole, I think, because everyone's just jamming new platforms down people's throats and they're all different. I just like, hey, let's just go collaborate with everybody and make the industry as a whole better.
Absolutely.
I think that's the goal.
Cool.
Well, my man, once again, Adam, very much thank you for being here on Event Masters. Before I tell them where they can find us, where can we find you and all your many locations here on the internet?
I'm on LinkedIn, Adam Parry /Adam Parry, or on Twitter, I reside as Punchtown Parry. So nickname of mine. So either one of those places, professionally or personally, depending on which one you're more interested in, go and check me out in those two places.
Right on. And guys, those of you viewing here at Event Next, this is Event Masters Show. We do this show every single Friday at 3 p.m. Patrick and I just get on with another amazing guest, an event master of their own, and we help you and compel you to become better, do better, create better experiences. You can find us anywhere on social medias, all of them, all the cool ones, at Event Masters Show. And with that being said, once again, Adam, thank you. And this is where we go ahead and take you guys out. We'll see you in the next episode.